going on? Brian Tong here, and welcome to the Apple Bits for everything good and bad inside the world of Apple. And the biggest news up to this point from Apple this year has happened. The HomePod is dead. Not the HomePod Mini, but the original HomePod. It's now, Apple gave a statement to TechCrunch, who first reported it, and in it, Apple said, "We are focusing our efforts on HomePod Mini. We are discontinuing the original HomePod. It will continue to be available while supplies last through the Apple online store, Apple retail stores, and Apple authorized resellers. Apple will provide HomePod customers with software updates and service and support through AppleCare." Translation: we were never able to sell enough HomePods because we really thought people would pay $349 for it, but they didn't. And then we added little to no new significant features during its 3-year lifespan. That's probably what they really meant. But if you're someone who's just deep in the ecosystem and you committed to this product, you're disappointed to hear this news. In fact, that's a sad Apple. Aww. And if you didn't purchase one after all these years because almost every other smart speaker does more at less than half the price, you're not surprised. I mean, personally, I've enjoyed the, in my opinion, extremely flawed HomePod, whose sound was amazing for a speaker at that size. I've always said this, but what wasn't amazing? It's $349 starting price point. That was way too overpriced for what it was, even if you added on the Apple tax. And then it was lowered to $299 about a year later. That was still too expensive. But even with deep sales on Best Buy and other retailers that were done multiple times over the past year, people still were not buying the HomePod. I did a video about 6 months ago with 4 ways that Apple could save the HomePod, and in it, I said that they still need to improve Siri, one of its biggest flaws. Their smart home device compatibility had to get better. They still needed to open up the HomePod to play nicer with other services, and they needed to offer a more affordable priced HomePod. Now, the $99 HomePod Mini answers the price issue, but it still hasn't tackled the other 3 problems, and the Mini is really good for its size, but it's nothing that wows you. I think most people were really impressed by it because of the sound that the Mini produces at that size, but it's nothing you haven't heard before, with an emphasis really on highs and mids, but not much on the low end to fill it out. I think the best thing about the original HomePod was its sound. I mean, I loved it compared to everything else on the market at that size, but the reason I even bought one was because it was refurbished from a Best Buy for like $199 back in 2018, the launch year, and that was just a few months after its release. So that was probably already a bad sign, but I was just hoping that, Apple would be committed to it and they would make it a whole lot better with software and bringing new features. Because when I look at this whole thing, this feels like a defeat for Cupertino. This is a speaker that they spent over 5 years developing. They even made it a point to show off their in-house audio development center to the press. They made a big deal about it, and they were touting one of the biggest test chambers in the US that was specifically made to be free of any kind of noise pollution and give it really the purest conditions for fine-tuning the HomePod. I mean, the results speak for themselves, but now they transitioned to the HomePod Mini with smaller but solid sound, but it also doesn't have the ability to create a home theater like you do with an Apple TV 4K like the regular HomePod can. So the question is, will the Mini even make much of a difference in the market just because it's $99? I mean, sure, it's a more reasonable Apple option at that price, but you look in comparison, you have the 4th generation Echo Dot. It starts at $49. Then you have the larger 4th gen Echo that starts at $99. Both of them have a spherical speaker design, much like the HomePod. But if we look to the latest smart speaker market share data from VoiceBot Research, it shows that in 2020, Amazon had the largest US smart speaker install base at 53%, dropping from 61% in 2019. Google took a large part of that, coming in second at 31% market share in 2020 compared to 24% in 2019. Apple, they pretty much stayed almost exactly the same at 2.8% market share in 2020 compared to 2.7% in 2019. And then you have Sonos here, who more than doubled their market share to 4.7% in 2020 compared to 2.2% in 2019, while passing up Apple at the same time. So you have Apple here sitting 4th place based on that data through 2020. So now you got to ask, how can the HomePod Mini dramatically change those numbers while still facing the same exact issues that the original HomePod did? Well, the answer is pretty easy. It probably won't, because I didn't see every Apple owner run out to the stores during the holiday season to get one. I'll be the first person to never doubt the power of Apple's ecosystem. hey, maybe things miraculously change, which again is highly unlikely, but the Mini feels like a product that came out 3 or 4 years too late. I mean, people are already pre-locked in and committed to their smart home ecosystem, and that market share numbers, they show all that. I started with an Amazon smart home ecosystem, and they haven't given me a single reason to change that. I know a lot of you are yelling like, hey, privacy concerns. And yes, privacy concerns might be a reason why you're on Team Apple for the smart home, but it hasn't been compelling enough of a reason for the general consumers. And I'm still interested in seeing, hey, how this HomePod Mini might change the market share numbers in 2021, but I don't think it'll make a significant difference, and I don't think it's enough to move them to that third place spot over Sonos either. So I throw the question back to you, like, what do you all think about Apple canceling the HomePod? Why did you buy it, or why didn't you? I mean, did Apple do too little to improve the product, or are you clinging onto hope that Apple makes a new version down the road? There's no rumors whatsoever, and chances of that happening are slim to none, and Slim just left the building. So put everything you're thinking in the comments. You know that I'm reading them, but before we move on, let's just take a moment of silence to remember the original HomePod. Rest in peace, HomePod. Yeah, I'm not that torn up about it. Now, this also makes it the second product Apple has discontinued in 2 weeks, because the first was the iMac Pro, which will also be available until supplies last. And that makes more sense because with the new Apple Silicon iMac coming sometime this year, you can't have an M1X iMac significantly outperform an iMac Pro in the product lineup. They say that bad news comes in threes. So, I decided, hey, HomePod dead, iMac Pro dead. So I decided to scan Apple's entire product lineup. Like, what do you think could be the next to go? Could Apple finally say goodbye to the iPod Touch? Because it was last updated in May of 2019, but are people still even really buying the iPod Touch, or now are we at the point where we're just handing down or using older iPhones by now? Also, could it be the Apple TV that is next on the chopping block? Now, Apple currently sells an Apple TV 4K and an Apple TV HD. They haven't updated it since late 2017. Like, good Lord, that's a long time. And all reports claim that a new one is ready for 2021, but I think they'll at least streamline down to a single model, which would mean the death of one of those models. And then, looking at everything else, are there any other products that could go bye-bye that you're thinking of? You know what I want to know? Let me know what you think, or maybe even what you think Apple should kill, but I don't think that we've seen the last casualty from Apple's product line in 2021 just yet. I'm just saying this so that you are mentally prepared for it. I think the reaction is that a lot of people weren't ready to say goodbye to the HomePod. Some people said, oh, I was going to buy one, or what do I do now? Well, you got something else. So long, HomePod. You still got some life in you, but we'll never see you reach your full potential. At least that's what I think. I put out my 4 reasons how they could have saved it. They didn't do any of that, and maybe we actually did see it meet its full potential, at least how Apple envisioned it. All right, that's going to do it for this video. If you like what you see, give me that thumbs up, subs up, and hit that notification bell, ding, to get all my videos when they drop. And if you want more Apple goodness, you want a deep dive, you can check out my Apple Bits XL audio podcast to get the latest stories with all these and new ones every week. Plus, we got special guests. And also, you can support my work at patreon.com/BrianTong. You get rewards at each contribution level, early access to my content, and a completely ad-free version of the podcast. All right, thanks so much for watching, everybody, and I'll see you next time. The HomePod is dead. I mean, you can go buy one if you want, but don't buy one. It's pretty much dead, all right? Take care and be safe. Peace and love, and RIP HomePod, RIP.